Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. In a few seconds, I'll turn it over to Attorney Ben Crump, but I did want to provide some direction to our friends in the media who are joining us today. At the bottom of the screen, you're going to see a Q&A feature. So if you have any questions for any of our panelists today, feel free to type those in there. And then at the end of our press conference today, I'll read them out for our panelists to answer. So again, use that Q&A feature. And if we don't get any of your questions today or to your question today, feel free to reach out to press@bencrump.com and we can communicate there. Attorney Crump, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Good morning. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, along with Attorney Jasmine Rand and Attorney Lynn Sherrod. I refer to her as Judge Sherrod because she was on the bench for a number of years, as well as David Johns, who is the Executive Director of the National Black Justice Coalition. And we are honored and proud to be with the parents of Nigel Shelby, Miss Kamika Shelby, and Mr. Patrick Cruz. As many of you know, I'm here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, fighting for justice on behalf of the family of George Floyd and the family, most recently, of Dante Wright, who was killed in Brooklyn Chase, Minnesota, 2 days ago. And we're fighting against implicit bias dealing with police excessive use of force. But we believe that implicit bias and discrimination, whether at the hands of the police who abuse their authority or the hands of school officials who abuse their authority and skirt their responsibilities, is just as important. And that's why I stopped everything I was doing for us to acknowledge that Nigel Shelby life mattered and that Nigel never should have died by suicide on April 18, 2019, especially when he was making all kind of cries for help. He even met with his principal, who said something that I was shocked Judge Sherrod would be said in this day and time. She told him when he talked about him being bullied by the other students for being gay, she said being gay is a choice, as if the problems that you're having with the other students is your fault, and did not offer any assistance or take any responsibility to make sure that this child was protected and nurtured and loved. So that's why Attorney Jasmine Rand and David Johns and I have been fighting to bring attention to this matter, and so honored to be joined by Judge Sherrod. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Jasmine Rand, who will facilitate matters from this moment going forward. And again, Attorney Rand, thank you for always fighting for those who are marginalized in our society.
Good morning. I'm honored to be here today as we announce the filing of the lawsuit against Huntsville High School and the City of Huntsville and the Huntsville Board of Education for the death by suicide of Nigel Shelby stemming from April 18th of 2019. We're here today to announce the filing of a lawsuit based on Title IX violations for discrimination that he suffered on the basis of his sex and gender and his sexuality, and also under Title VI for the racial discrimination that he suffered at the hands of the students. And so some of the more egregious facts that occurred in this case and that we want to address in terms of this lawsuit and fighting for justice for Nigel is, as Ben said, the fact that not only were students bullying him persistently, and this is not something that happened in terms of an isolated incident. There was a long pattern of bullying and discrimination against Nigel Shelby, by other students, for months and months at this school. And it dragged on for an extended period of time, including one girl, that we know of that battered him. Students were calling him derogatory names, were calling him racial slurs, were calling him slurs based on his sexuality. He was getting harassed not only in school, but also on social media. And adding insult to injury, when he brought to the attention of school administrators all of this bullying and discrimination that he was suffering at school, instead of helping him and assisting him, the school administrators also bullied him and further discriminated against him. And some of the most egregious examples that we have of that are essentially the freshman academy principal, Joe Stafford, who told him, as attorney Benjamin Crump said, that being gay was a choice, insinuating that he could just stop being gay and that all of his problems would go away if he made that decision. She also told him, when he reported getting bullied on social media, that the bullying, if he was going to make adult decisions, that he should be prepared to deal with adult consequences, and took no action at all to protect him. In addition, she did things like she told him to make him feel better. He could dance to Black people music, and turned on music in her office in the presence of other children and mocked him as if, holding her own minstrel show in her office, which is an obvious act of racial discrimination and also discriminating against him, again, based on his gender, his sex, and his sexuality. Now, these administrators had a tremendous amount of prior notice that Nigel Shelby was in fact suicidal, and that he was experiencing suicidal ideations. As we've had an opportunity to review materials gathered in a preliminary investigation into the matter, many students came forward and said not only did Nigel report the discrimination that he was suffering at school to the administrators, that the administrators actively engaged in discrimination, as I have just stated. And they also reported that they were concerned that Nigel would take his own life. And the school administrators denied the pleas for the other students' help to intervene on Nigel's behalf and to save his life. Most poignantly, almost immediately after Nigel unfortunately passed, Joe Stafford called Miss Kamika Shelby and told her that she could find a suicide note in Nigel's backpack. Now, if the administrators had that much notice that Nigel was in risk of dying by suicide, they had a responsibility to intervene and try to save his life, but nobody did. And today we are going to hold those administrators accountable, that school accountable, and push for larger policy changes, because no child should be subjected to that type of racial discrimination, should be subjected to discrimination and bullying and persistent harassment based on their gender, their sex, or their sexual identity. And as attorney Benjamin Crump stated, we fight all over the country for cases involving Black Lives Matter. And Nigel Shelby's life mattered. And we are going to fight this thing on the basis of discrimination that he suffered as a consequence of being born Black and of choosing to be gay, or being gay. We are going to ensure that those rights are protected. And we are also joined today, as Ben Crump said, by Executive Director of NBJC, David Johns, who is an incredible advocate and really instrumental in changing the policy and the course of this nation to help uplift youth. David?
Yeah, thank you for that, Jasmine, and to you as well, Ben. Before I say anything, I want to say, Kamika, that I see you and I love you.
I love you, David.
I want to acknowledge that we are talking about a child, Nigel Shelby, who loved Beyonce probably more than I do, who loved his friends so very dearly, who loved music and to create and to sing and to write and to engage in creative expression while going through the process of figuring out who he was purposed to be in the world and in the spaces that he was forced to show up in. And so I don't want to be lost for a second as we talk about the facts of this case, that this is about a child who should have had the opportunity to choose life. And so there are a couple of facts that I want to offer that everyone should consider. And the first is that the suicide rates for Black youth have more than doubled in the last 2 decades. The fact that children, none of whom asked to be born, are making a choice to not live is a problem in and of itself. But then when contextualized by the reality that this is only true for Black children, for every other community of children based on race or ethnicity, suicide rates have decreased, which suggests that we have to be aware of the context within which Black children in particular are often forced to make decisions about their well-being and their livelihood. What we know based on available data from GLSEN is that students who are and identify as members of the LGBTQIA+ community, or who are believed to be members of the LGBTQIA+ community, face increased rates of bullying and harassment and violence in the very schools that they are compelled by law to move through. And that is our responsibility as educators and as caring and concerned adults, those of us who elect to do God's work and show up in these spaces that our babies are forced to move through. The last point, the last fact that I want people to consider is that right now, in so many states across this country, including in Alabama, LGBTQIA+ students do not have the same protections, legal protections, as their non-LGBTQIA+ peers. What do we as adults, again, who sometimes invite young children into these spaces, have to say for the ways in which we don't treat our children, our precious children, fairly and equally? What do each of us have to say? Nigel should be here so that we could be having a very different conversation about ways to support him. And my hope is that his life and his legacy will allow us to accept the responsibility that we have, especially those of us who are mandatory reporters, have to support the cognitive, social, and emotional development of every single student, especially students who live at the intersections of racial, stigmatized, minoritized oppression, and oppression as a result of minoritized sexual identity. Nigel deserved that and better. His parents, Nigel Shelby and Patrick Cruz, deserve that and better. And every single child in our country deserves better. I hope that we will do better.
David, thank you so much, and MBJC for being such incredible, policy advocates in this field and really advocating through your activism for the parents and to ensure, especially in this case, that Nigel Shelby's life mattered and that we're going to create systemic changes going forward to stop this from happening to other children. And now I will invite Judge Lynn Sherrod, if you have anything you would like to add, I would invite you to add anything at this time, and then we'll hear from the parents.
Thank you very much, Jasmine, and thanks to each of you on behalf of these parents. You can see them, you can see their pain. I can feel their pain here in this room. I am a parent. The one thing parents do not want is to have to bury their children. Nigel's life mattered. The life of every child in this community matters. We are so hopeful that the dialogue we will create will spare other parents from having to go through this grief, from having to go through this pain. But more importantly, every child is important. Our children are our greatest resource. We cannot allow our children to just be snuffed out. They are our future. We're in Huntsville, Alabama, the rocket city, the city that helped put a man on the moon, the city that continues to direct Space Force and other very wonderful things. Surely we can contribute to the dialogue because it can be taught. You can be taught to not bully. You can be taught what racial injustice look like. You can be taught that homosexuality is not a choice. We can educate the community, and hopefully we will be able to contribute to that dialogue. These parents are in great pain. The pain is not going away. It's been almost 2 years, and you can still feel the pain that they are suffering. We don't want other parents to feel this pain. We want everyone to understand. And please be aware, I recognize that the schools are our first line of defense where our children are concerned. They are there with our children hours on hours every day. And they often know things that children don't come home and tell parents. So we've got to continue to educate our educators on the signs and signals that they need to get a hold of. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the mother of Nigel. Nigel was 14 years old. His mother, Kamika, can offer any comments she'd like. I'll take a minute.
This has been the hardest 2 years of my life. It's a constant struggle. It's a constant emotional roller coaster. I go through so many mixed emotions, from being sad to being angry. The worst part about all of this, I mean, obviously, is losing him, but it's the fact that all of this stuff was going on. And I had no idea. It hurts even worse because as a parent, you want to do everything you can to protect your kids. I reached out. I reached out to see what was going on at school. And I was always told everything was fine. And it wasn't fine. At this point, I'm a little lost for words because some of the stuff that Jasmine mentioned earlier that had happened, you know, I wasn't even aware of the specifics of it. So just hearing it. I don't even know what to say. There's a lot.
Patrick,
I'm sorry.
is there anything you'd like to say? And let me say, we all understand how difficult this situation is for you, how emotional this is. You know, we all say we'll do anything for our children. But you were not able to do what should have been done to keep the child safe.
That's what pisses me off even more, because I'm not the type of mother that would have allowed my child to just continuously go through this. So it hurts. It hurts.
And Judge Sherrod and Kamika, I think it's so important that we're bringing these issues to life because, as Judge Sherrod pointed out, schools have a responsibility and a duty to children that when they learn about this information, they have a duty to protect them, they have a duty to report it to their parents, and to seek help on their behalf. And we want to ensure going forward that that no other child like Nigel Shelby, that these schools don't fail to report to the parents what's happening on, that they don't fail to get intervention to help save a life. And Mr. Cruz, did you want to add anything else about your son?
Yeah. I miss him so much. Like, it's like I cry so much. God, I blame myself for all of this because I wasn't there. You know, I did some things in the past that I had to do some time for, and I wasn't there. And I feel like if I was there, maybe he'd still be here, you know? And it's like now that when I hear everything that was going on at the school, that crushed me. He didn't have nobody, you know? And it's like, I can understand his pain because I went through the same thing growing up. But like, kind of suicidal life, you know, mental health, all of that. And it's like, he shut down. Sometimes people don't want to, you know, he didn't want to open up and tell nobody. And it's like, I felt like the last time I seen him, it's like, we had a talk about this. And I accept whatever he, you know, whatever he chooses in life. It's my son, I love him, and he shouldn't have to be treated like that and to be neglected. You understand? And I can't talk to him no more. Like, I missed out on that. And basically, anyone that's listening, it's hard to actually go through it, you know? And I thank y'all for y'all love and support for us. And all the questions that I have, I know they're gonna come out. The answers that I'm looking for, they're gonna come out at the end. So with that, I leave it to y'all to do y'all best.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Do a closure, yes, ma'am.
We're going to do our best by you, and we're going to do our best by his mother, Kamika, and we're going to do our best by Nigel to really bring justice on your son's behalf and to fight to ensure that this does not continue to happen to other students. Sax, do we have any questions from the press?
We do, but I do want to remind everybody, if you do have questions, please type them in that Q&A feature, and we'll do our best to get through them all. Attorney Rand, I will read them out loud, but I'll leave it to you to either answer or direct them as you see fit. So our first question is, what is the ultimate goal of the lawsuit and why file now?
You know, the goal of the lawsuit is really to bring justice on behalf of Nigel Shelby. It is to bring justice for the loss to these parents of their son. And it's also to try to change the policy, to stop schools from school administrators from participating in bullying, you know, students who are Black and who are gay, to stop other students from bullying, you know, people who are Black and gay, and to really address this matrix of oppression that Nigel experienced based on that duality of being a Black gay male in school. And so we have to really fight to change this at the policy level, to give greater protection under the law to you know, persons' rights based on their sexuality, and to try to really push the gamut in Alabama and in our nation, in the same way that the George Floyd case has led to really systemic reform involving police brutality. And we want to ensure that children do not continue to die by suicide because of their race, because of their sexuality.
Okay, this one actually came in through email, and this is to the parents. What do you want people to know most about your son, Nigel?
Oh, intelligent, smart, outgoing. He had a swagger too. I give him that too. I mean, just he was a people's person. And I mean, all the kids just love being around him. You know, he was a good child, like good in school, great, awesome. And to be honest with you, I play this in my head back every day for the last 2 years. And he said, I remember he was little. He told me, Dad, I was gonna be famous one day. And I look at this tragedy like, you know, this was not the type of famous that I was looking, you know, for him to be, because he could sing, he could rap, he could draw, he could do anything he put his mind to. And I just want everyone to know that about my son, that when I look in the mirror every day, I see him. I see him in myself, and I just wish he was here. Like, I'm speechless right now. I don't know. I practiced this like several times, and I don't know. I apologize. I'm just.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Cruz. Kamika,
Right.
is there anything that you want to add?
I'm gonna do whatever it takes.
You've
to
been in
make
the
sure
crowd.
that when Nigel's name is said, it's not suicide attached to it. It's change. I was afraid in the beginning to go through with this because of what I'm experiencing now, sleepless nights, you know, hard emotions, just a lot. But if going through with this lawsuit is what I gotta do to bring change, to bring justice, then I'm gonna do whatever it takes. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. All right, so our next question, what specifically do you hope Huntsville City Schools or other schools change moving forward?
You know, first, I think we hope that Huntsville High School and that other schools would do what God has called us to do, and that is to be love and not to be hate. There's no more powerful force in this world than love. And it's really as simple as that. If they had loved this child as their parents love him, then they would have sought the help for him that he needed instead of behaving in hateful, despicable ways, making him dance to quote unquote Black people music in, you know, the freshman academy principal's office. That when other students, these are children, go to them and say, something's wrong with Nigel. We're afraid he's going to continue to harm himself. We're afraid he is going to commit suicide. That those school administrators step up to the plate and say, hey, even if there's the most slight possibility that this could happen, we want to save this child's life. They had notice after notice after notice. They had opportunity after missed opportunity after missed opportunity to save Nigel's life. We want schools to step up to the plate and to love children as they should, first and foremost. We also want Huntsville High School and other schools out there to follow the laws that exist. Their behavior was unlawful. They didn't report as they should have when they had direct knowledge that Nigel Shelby was suicidal, that he had been engaging in acts of self-harm, that he had what they believe kids may believe may have been rope burn on his neck, and didn't tell any of the school administrators, or I'm sorry, they told the school administrators and nobody tried to get help for him. So we want them to follow the laws that exist. And we hope that this case that this experience, not just this case, this human being, that this child, that Nigel Shelby, will make lawmakers step up to the plate and to create better laws and stronger policy to stop this type of abuse and harassment so that no other children have to lose their lives.
Not just stronger policies, Jasmine, but to enforce those policies. Having it on paper means absolutely nothing if it is not enforced, if it is not practiced, if it doesn't have the teeth that is necessary to make things happen.
Thank you. Okay, so our next question, why are you also suing the city of Huntsville and not just the school district?
We're suing the city of Huntsville as a matter of law. Typically, the city is ultimately responsible for things like the police department, for the schools. And so as a matter of law, we have to sue multiple entities when really the incident occurred at Huntsville High School and as a result of the actions of teachers, employees, and administrators of Huntsville High School.
Okay, Huntsville City Schools sent media outlets a release in anticipation of the suit a couple weeks ago. It emphasized its commitment to supporting students in the LGBTQIA+ community. What is your take on that statement?
I think, to make a statement and to enforce policies, as Judge Sherrod said, are two different things. And from what I read in terms of the investigation into Nigel's specific case, that this type of abuse and discrimination was not an isolated incident. It was widespread at Huntsville High School. And they already had policies in existence when this was happening to Nigel. And so writing beautiful policies and making, nice press statements doesn't save lives. Enforcing those policies does, staying true to your creed does. And I hope that they will be committed to saving lives going forward.
I believe this has been touched on, but I'll read it in case there's anything that needs to be added. What has the response been so far from Huntsville City Schools?
We're filing the lawsuit, so it clearly has not been, favorable from our position. There's been very little communication from Huntsville City Schools.
Is the principal still working for Huntsville City Schools?
We believe that she's working in another position now.
Well, that's all the questions I have. But again, if there are any follow-ups, please reach out to press@bencrump.com and we'll get those answered for you. Attorney Rand, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, thank you. We want to thank the press for joining us today, and we can all log off now.
Thank you.
Thank you.